It's one of the more difficult Parshas this week.
Why? What makes you say that?
So, Parsha Shmini, let me tell you exactly why this Parsha is so difficult. Just about from the middle of Sefer Shmot, we've been dealing with the Mishkan, and we will continue to deal with the Mishkan until Sefer Bamidbar. And Am Yisrael are so ready for this day of inauguration. But within our Parsha, within two psukim, this great story, this great event takes a turn to the most tragic outcome that can happen. And even when you look into the psukim itself and try to understand this story, just more questions come up and rise. The Torah goes into great detail in the beginning of the Parsha, describing that special day, describing how Moshe Rabbeinu, after the 7 days of Miluim, showed Aharon on his first day what to do. His sons, they were all ready. You can imagine how they were dressed in the new Big Day Kahuna. You can imagine all of Am Yisrael standing there and looking and again waiting. Keep in mind that this all is happening after Chet HaEgel, after HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgave Am Yisrael, and the Mishkan came as some sort of an answer to Chet HaEgel, and all of Am Yisrael volunteered and were part of building the Mishkan. You can really imagine and feel the excitement in the air. And then again, within two psukim, fire comes down from the sky and just kills Aaron's two sons. Two of the 5 Kohanim that were there. That's 40% of the royal family that were in charge of the Mishkan. And you can imagine the silence that took over the crowd, and you can imagine the shock that took over the crowd. But again, when you look at the psukim itself, what is Moshe Rabbeinu saying right after this? This is what I told you, Bekovaya Kadesh. Now, we all know that Aaron was rewarded for being quiet, and that's a huge step and huge level of bitachon that Aaron has. But what is Moshe Rabbeinu saying? He knew this was going to happen. And when you look at Rashi brings a midrash that's even more crazy than that. Rashi says that Moshe tells Aharon, I knew that either me or you were going to die today. And what is Moshe saying? Where is this midrash coming from? What is Rashi telling us? If this was really planned and Moshe Rabbeinu knew, why weren't we told about this before the inauguration? Why weren't we prepared for this? Why is it coming out only now? What is going on over here? What is this whole thing about? This great tragedy that happens on this most incredible and amazing day that all of Am Yisrael were waiting for.
Yeah, I see what you're saying now. This really is both emotionally difficult and also hard to understand. And I think that key pasuk to really understand is, what is Moshe responding to Aaron? Hu asher diber Hashem. This is what Hashem said, Bikrovaye Kadesh. Those who are close to me, through them I will sanctify my name. What does that mean? How is that an answer to what just happened? And maybe this ties to a broader question. Why do we always link the term Kiddush Hashem to Mesirut Nefesh, to giving your life for HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Sanctifying HaKadosh Baruch Hu can be done in many ways. We do Kiddush on Shabbos. Why do we see the term Kiddush Hashem somewhat tied to Mesirut Nefesh? But maybe the description that you described of the excitement is exactly key to understanding what happens here. Because Am Yisrael is in a moment of excitement, of love, of connection, and especially in those moments, there's fear of losing boundaries, of things losing their limits. And this is exactly what happens with Nadav and Avihu. As we know, Nadav and Avihu, as Moshe says, they're great people. And because of their closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they want to continue this excitement. They want to bring their part within it. And they lose those limits, which are so critical when dealing with the Mishkan. This is maybe the concept of Bikrovaye Kadesh, similar to the concept of Kiddush Hashem. We know that although we sanctify HaKadosh Baruch Hu our whole life, we have Shabbos, we have Kiddush on Shabbos, we take the wine and we do Kedusha. Sanctifying something is saying that this is unique, this is special, this is beyond, this isn't just regular wine, this is holy, this belongs to something else. And sanctifying our life is finding those values, saying my life is not just going to be normal and plain, I'm going to find value in them. But why is Kiddush Hashem always linked somehow to Mesirut Nefesh, to dying for something? Why is this always tied to Mesirut Nefesh, to dying in the name of these values? Maybe because, and we're just post-elections, we always like looking for the hidden motive. You know, what is their real interest? We see people come, say their values are this and that. We never believe them. We always think there's something else driving them. All that ends at the moment when someone is ready to give his life for those values. When that happens, he's basically saying these values are so important to me, they're more than life itself. And therefore, although we sanctify HaKadosh Baruch Hu throughout our whole life, in the moment where what we stand for, the values we stand for, becomes greater than life itself, that's the moment where we truly sanctify those values. And maybe this is what Moshe Rabbeinu understood. It's not that he understood that someone was going to die necessarily, but he understood that just like the peak of building the Mishkan, as we spoke about a few weeks ago, is that moment when even Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't enter the Mishkan anymore because the cloud rested upon it. So the same is true about this moment of finally the Mishkan starting to play its role, of the Shechina coming down, of this great closeness. That too will have to come with also a moment of of limitation, of learning where even the greatest, even Nadav and Avihu, they can't do everything. There's a limit. Even though they want and it's good and they want to bring their, but no, even Nadav and Avihu, as close as they are, have their limits. That there are some things that are even greater than life of Nadav and Avihu. There are things that are even beyond them. And maybe this moment is exactly what differentiates between the Egel, the Avodah Zarah, and the real Mishkan. Is it something which I created, my creation, my hands? It's about me bringing something and therefore I can do whatever I want. I can bring whatever I created it. Or is this something that's really godly? And that moment of truly, on the one hand, feeling that love, but at the same time, understanding those limits, that moment is what makes the Mishkan not just a wonderful, beautiful creation that human beings created, but rather truly the house of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in this world is revealed.
Exactly, and I think that line you were referring to, you can see that line throughout the entire Parsha, and also, as we know, in many other aspects in Judaism, in our life, of knowing where your limits are as a human being and understanding that from that point onwards, you are not commanded. The commandment from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is only until that point, and it's very interesting to see that Aaron's response to this was Vaidom Aharon. Aaron stood silent, and it's very interesting because I think people don't really understand and don't really comprehend what it meant for Aaron to stand still, to stand silent. Because if we go back a little bit to the beginning of Sefer Shmot, where we're first introduced to Moshe and Aharon, Moshe got the job to lead Am Yisrael, but Moshe couldn't talk. Moshe wasn't able to talk. He physically has a stutter. He can't talk well. But also HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, don't worry, I will put the words in your mouth. Meaning to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't fix Moshe's stutter. He just said to him, you're going to say what I want you to say. So Moshe Rabbeinu had no freedom of speech, as we would say nowadays. He couldn't say what he wanted. He physically and fundamentally, he couldn't say things that he wanted to say. However, the one to talk was always Aharon. Aharon, between those two, he was the one that always stepped forward and said the words and used his words in situations. And we know that in front of Paro, but we also know that from Mishnah and Avot, that Aharon teaches us a very important rule, that sometimes you're allowed to lie. And if you take a step back and say to yourself, hold on, what do you mean you're allowed to lie? From an ethical perspective, you're never allowed to lie. Lying is never a good thing. But Aharon, according to Mishnah and Avot, says he would go around and in order to bring peace between people, he would tell what we call a white lie or a good lie that is meant for good intentions, that is meant to bring peace among people. Then you are allowed to lie. And it's, again, Aharon HaKohen, the one whose power, his actual strength was to talk, to be the one talking. He even knew how to use the bad talking and turn it into good. And suddenly over here, Aharon is the one not to talk. He doesn't respond. He doesn't say anything. Vaidom Aharon. Aharon stays silent. And that's exactly what you were saying. Aharon knows when to draw the line. This point, now talking is not suitable. Now talking is not relevant. Now Aharon HaKohen draws the line. Just like you were saying with Nadav and Avihu, like the Gemara says that they brought it from their own will. They didn't know where to draw their line. They thought because of their passion to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because of their love, because of their excitement, they wanted to add something on. But that's exactly the point. You have to know where the line is because it's not about you. It's about what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from you. And the same thing with Aharon. Aharon, he was supposed to talk. He had to talk. There were times where he had to even change the words and turn a lie into a good thing. And then there are times where he's not allowed to talk. Sometimes there are times that your talking is expressed by being silent. As we know, the famous Gemara says, that sometimes being silent is worth more than actual talking. And you know, thinking about today's day and age, again, we've said this many times in the past, where people have the feeling that they should share everything they have on their mind and they can say everything they want to say. And if they don't, then it hurts their freedom of speech. But that's exactly not understanding what freedom of speech is. Freedom of speech means that you should say what you can say, but sometimes you have to stay silent. There is no freedom of speech if you don't understand the lines of staying silent. There is no freedom if there's no boundaries around it, because otherwise it's just chaos. As we know, with the days of the week, there's no day of rest if there's no days of work, and there's no kodesh if there's no chol. There's no holy if there's no profane. There's no pure if there's no impure. In order to have one aspect, you have to have the other side of it. You have to have the lines drawn. And probably this is the important lesson that is being taught right over here again, because Chet Egel, because Am Yisrael were so passionate to build the Mishkan. Even the sons of Aharon, everybody was so passionate. Maybe this is what, according to Rashi, Moshe says to Aharon, we were going to be too passionate. We wouldn't know to draw that line, and something like this might happen. And this is exactly what happened, to show to Am Yisrael that it's not about you. In Judaism, Mesiras Nefesh is not about sacrificing yourself, but sacrificing yourself for God. And in Judaism, the more important rule is v'chai b'hem, to live your life, but to live it according to Torah, to live it according to mitzvahs, and sanctify them, and bring the kedusha, bring that holiness, bring HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name into everything you do because you do it the right way.
It's interesting you mentioned freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is seen as such a basic right. The most basic thing that a human needs is to have a voice, to be able to speak up. Otherwise, his life isn't life. It's like one of those basic needs. So maybe in a certain sense, Kiddush Hashem that's expressed here by Aharon is not speaking. It's not living. That most basic thing is always being able to express and always being able to say something, being able to say there's something greater than me. There are things I don't understand that are beyond me. That moment is the moment of Vayidom Aharon, is the moment of the Kiddush Hashem, not by giving up his life, but by giving up that basic right of always having something to say about everything. Being silent is that same moment of Kiddush Hashem, of drawing that line, of saying, I'll do, and I'm there, and I'll speak, and I'll say, but there's certain things that are beyond me. That's Vayidom Aharon. Maybe that's our entire Parsha and everything that's happening at that great moment of the Shechina coming down into the Mishkan.
Beautiful, wonderful.
Thank you. Shkoyach. Shabbat Shalom.
Shkoyach to you, good Shabbos, and we'll talk again next week.
For more Talking Torah videos on different topics, check out our YouTube channel.